Stop me if you've heard this before, but Michigan is the America of America. Let's think about this. This is less crazy than you might think. So, America's neighbors on the left side and right of us are two oceans. Michigan's neighbors on the left and right of us are two Great Lakes. Michigan and America are both an acquired taste. You don't drive through Michigan like you do a state like Ohio or Pennsylvania, like you do like a country like France. You drive to Michigan because you've chosen to be here. Life, circumstance, University of Michigan, Ford Motor Company, or a pretty girl. These are the lures that typically bring people in, but it's for a specific reason that you're here. No one ever came to Michigan because they were passing through, because geography makes that an impossibility. People opt into America. Outsiders have to opt into Michigan. You don't just wind up here on the way to someplace else. And both Michigan and America are targeted by non-natives who feel it's their job to change the place rather than to celebrate it, appreciate it, and help it grow. Let's think about it. With America, our many foreign arrivals, the second they get here, they think it's their job to change America and its laws and even its supreme law, like the Second Amendment. So many of them come here and they act like the Second Amendment is just a suggestion or a byproduct of a past time or from an era where men were meaner than they are now. I think about Michigan Congressman Sri Thanadar of Detroit. Sri is an Indian man who became an American citizen and then became a congressman. But as a congressman, Sri pushes for an assault weapons ban without any understanding of what an assault weapon even is. Sri Thanadar does not want to make America better or safer. He wants to make America more like India, which is significantly less prosperous, less free, and less safe than America. And so rather than appreciate what makes America unique, they try to make us more like the third world countries they come from. Michigan's new arrivals do the same thing. State Senator Mallory McMorrow, she grew up in New Jersey. She's less than a decade into her time in living in Michigan, and yet at this point she's been elected twice to the Michigan Senate and is now running for the U.S. Senate. One of my most toxic traits is I love to read. Whenever there's a political memoir written in Michigan by someone who's currently a politician, I love to read those books. They're all bad books, but I read them all. And Mallory McMorrow's Hate Won't Win, which was released last year to promote this Senate run, was one of them. And what I learned from reading Hate Won't Win is that Mallory McMorrow is a walking red flag. The whole book builds up to McMorrow's one and only achievement as a lawmaker, which is the passage of a red flag law. That red flag law lets authorities take guns away from people who are legal gun owners without as much as a hearing or even a finding that any law at all was broken. So think about this as asset forfeiture, except that asset is specifically protected by the Second Amendment. And these seizures are happening anyway, against people's consent, and often without them even being informed that the hearing has taken place, that a decision has been made. That red flag law was passed in 2023. That same year, McMorrow's Democrat colleague, a state rep named Phil Skaggs, an Ohio native, tried to pass a bill that would change Michigan's state flag. Phil Skaggs was born in Ohio. He's a Buckeye. But the Democrats get a 2-seat majority in the Michigan House and Michigan Senate for the first time in 40 years, and a newcomer, a Johnny-come-lately like a Phil Skaggs, thinks that 2-seat majority is his green light to change a flag that we've had for damn near 2 centuries at this point. Make that make sense. It only makes sense when you understand what a Phil Skaggs and a Mallory McMorrow are here to do, which is to change and reform Michigan. Humble hearts might lead people like Skaggs and McMorrow to first understand the state and the people they're representing before trying to change it. But humility obviously never occurred to either one. General Lewis Cass, man who donated the land that became Cass Tech High School in Detroit, which is still named that to this day, he designed Michigan's Great Seal in 1835. This seal includes a man standing near the water on a sunny day. We only get about 90 of those a year, holding a gun. So one carpetbagger, Phil Skaggs of Ohio, wants to remove the man with a gun from Michigan's state flag. And another, Mallory McMorrow of New Jersey, wants to remove the gun from the man using the red flag law. Do you see now the problem with the carpetbagger politician? Michigan has a rich history with carpetbagger politicians. Jennifer Granholm, who was elected to governor just as I was leaving high school early into college, she was born in Canada. George Romney, the father of the 1963 Michigan Constitution, the one we still live under right now, was born in Mexico. Our first governor, Stevens T. Mason, he hailed from founding stock. His grandfather was named Stevens Thompson Mason, like himself. He was a U.S. Senator in Virginia when Thomas Jefferson was president. His great-grand uncle, George Mason, was a founding father, was one of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. What you might not know is that Michigan was the 26th state admitted to the Union. So us being 26 means Michigan is the first of the second half of states admitted to the Union. It makes sense when you're admitted that many years into an ongoing project that you'd want founding stock, that you'd want the ideas and the talents and the skills, the wisdom of people who'd been there from the beginning to lead your journey as your state's just beginning. So Stevens T. Mason made perfect sense in 1835. My thing is, we're 190 years almost into statehood. Stevens T. Mason's not walking through that door. Phil Skaggs and Mallory McMorrow don't come from family backgrounds that could help Michigan along in its journey. We are a mature and old state at this point. We got it from here, guys. And yet Michigan seems to be so targeted by these outside forces who don't just want to come here and live here because it's beautiful, but they come here to be politicians, and then they try to use their power to change Michigan, not to embrace Michigan, not to make Detroit build again. Michigan is almost 190 years into statehood. We'll hit that milestone in January. I'd say the training wheels have popped off. We needed Stevens T. Mason in the 80s. We do not need Mallory McMorrow, Phil Skaggs, or Jocelyn Benson, a Pittsburgh woman who is now running for governor. I say all that to say this: Michigan doesn't need Mallory McMorrow, and we damn sure don't need Jocelyn Benson. But if you look at the histories of both women, Mallory McMorrow and Jocelyn Benson do need us. Michigan, look, we're a sleepy people. We're a state that runs on brawn, when the rest of the world runs on brain. Michigan is viewed as easy pickings by the coastal elite. All they got to do is airdrop in somebody like McMorrow or Benson, let them be seen drinking some Oberon, and before you know it, they become the leaders of our state. Think about Alyssa Slotkin. I mean, look, Alyssa Slotkin did at least grow up here. From what I understand, she went to Cranbrook the same time as Eminem's foe from 8 Mile, Clarence, who has both of his parents, so at least she has some bona fides. But remember, she only moved back to Michigan to run for office. Alyssa Slotkin's first time voting in Michigan was in 2018 when she voted for herself. Mallory McMorrow, she ran in 2018. She was part of that class of 2018, which, by the way, Gretchen Whitmer as governor, Jocelyn Benson as secretary of state, and a Nessel, right? The Charlie's Angels trio. That trio all swept in that pink wave of 2018. They brought along Alyssa Slotkin. They brought along Mallory McMorrow. So Mallory McMorrow comes in, first-time politician. No reason that she should be even running for office, yet she somehow is able to beat Marty Nolenberg, who is not only a name, but that family has some money, and he was an incumbent. And she's able to just walk right into the Michigan Senate. When you look at how things went for Slotkin, Morrow, and Jocelyn Benson in 2018, all three of them swept in the same year, you see why Michigan is so targeted and so coveted by the coastal elite. It doesn't take much Michigan on your resume to wind up in our seat of power, in our seat of honor. And so we have to be on guard and be a lot less trusting of these people and their stories. Are you here because you want to serve, or are you here because you want power? In all three of these cases, these women just wanted power, and because Gretchen Whitmer swept in on a blue wave, the pink wave, they got it. And now both of them, McMorrow and Benson, are seeking promotions, while Alyssa Slotkin already got hers. She's a U.S. Senator. She won't be back on the ballot until 2030. And so there's not much we can do about Slotkin in the meantime, but McMorrow and Benson are right in our purview. We have them right where we want them. And what I need you to know about them is that McMorrow and Benson are not here as our neighbors. They're here as reformers. They're here as foot soldiers of the blue team sent to bring coastal values to Michigan. Jocelyn Benson is somebody who went to Oxford, who's been to Harvard, so she believes it is her job to import the values from those institutions onto sleepy little Michigan. And what better bully pulpit could you hope for than being our governor? I guess the next best one would be U.S. Senator, which is what Mallory McMorrow wants. And so that red flag mentality that she got from her years living in California is exactly what she wants to bring to the U.S. Senate. So Malibu Mallory passed red flag laws for Michigan. She would look to do the same in Washington as a U.S. Senator. It's not just Michigan's gun culture she has a problem with, it's America's gun culture. You know, another thing I find interesting about McMorrow is that twice in her memoir, she tells readers to ignore the feds. She's essentially giving advice to people who want to be operatives or want to be candidates or want to be involved. And she tells them to ignore the feds, that the best place to have your voice heard is in state and local politics. Put another way, put more eloquently, you might say, make politics local again. So, with the bones of the mission, Mallory McMorrow agrees. Yes, Washington's a bad TV show. You can actually have an impact and get things done at the state and local level. Why then is McMorrow running for federal office? Well, because it all starts with one viral moment. My colleague Anna Hoffman did a really good piece at The Enjoyer talking about how Mallory McMorrow's groomer speech from 2022, the one that raised so much money, the one that put her on the national stage, the one that led to the memoir and then led to the Senate run, led to a speech at the Democrat convention, hasn't really aged well. I encourage everybody to read that piece because when you read it, you'll see that Mallory McMorrow is far from unbeatable. When McMorrow spoke at the Democrat convention, you saw her throat get dry. You saw the lizard tongue. You saw that fear in her eyes as she realized, wait a minute, I'm on live TV with no net, can't drink water. All I can do is lick my way through it. And so these people are not infallible. They're not unbeatable. They're not political wizards. They trusted that Michigan was a sleepy state with sleepy people where they could come right in and sweep in on Gretchen Whitmer's blue wave. And they did that. But now Jocelyn Benson's going to be at the top of the ticket. And if the governor's race is not the top of the ticket, then the U.S. Senate race certainly is, and McMorrow wants to be that. There's no big Gretch wave to ride anymore. These girls are all on their lonesome, and I think that McMorrow and Benson don't really help each other. They're being two carpetbaggers, and this prominent of roles calls attention to the whole thing. The comparison I would make, when it became clear that Kamala Harris was failing as a presidential candidate in 24, they called him Barack Obama. We all saw that video where Barack Obama is talking to a group of about 8 to 10 young black men, Democrat volunteers, true believers, and trying to get them to whip up the same excitement for Harris that people felt for Obama in 2008. Except Obama, you could tell he knew it wasn't going to work, and it did not work. And it's the same dynamic where they cancel each other out. Look, we were so excited to have a black president in America, and not just myself, but many people in America, probably even a lot of you, were excited to get that monkey off our back. We were excited to part ways with the bad history of old, right? And to try something different. And what did we get for it? Black people in particular, what did we get for it? You thought you elected the first black president. Turns out you elected whatever the hell a Hussein is, who is actually the first gay president, who did much more to advance the gay cause than he ever did the black cause. And so when you have a chance to elect the first black president, I think the mentality was whatever you got to do to get the first guy across, right? Let's just overlook the fact that his middle name is Hussein, which is not really a thing in our community. But then you had Kamala Harris come in as the second, and her middle name is Devi, an Indian name. So you're telling me the only two black presidential contenders the Democrats have ever furnished for us as main party nominees, one guy's middle name is Hussein, and the chick's middle name is Devi. Never occurred to them to get like a heritage black American, someone with two black American parents to do this? Never crossed their minds, apparently. You could get away with one, but not both. You can get away with one carpetbagger, McMorrow or Benson, But having both just calls attention to the entire thing, and that's why I think it won't work this time around. Benson and McMorrow are not here as our neighbors, they're here as reformers. They're foot soldiers of the blue team sent to bring Harvard values, Notre Dame values, coastal values to little old Michigan. I'll say it again, Mallory McMorrow is a walking red flag. Well, let's look at how that red flag law that she passed is doing. According to a Detroit News report, in the first full year of the red flag law, there was 391 requests made for gun removal, and about 73% of them, or 287, were granted. Here's where things get sketchy, and this is when I need my Second Amendment brothers to really find their voice. I understand that there's a lot of gun users and hunters and all this kind of thing in Michigan who don't vote, probably because they don't believe that Republican politicians will have their back. To which I say, twist their arms. This is what politics is. It's convincing people who didn't wake up wanting to do your thing to do your thing anyway, regardless of what they personally believe, because they understand that survival in the seats they hold is essential, okay? And that getting your thing done is how they get their thing done, which is remaining in power. So this number will jump out at you. Of those 300 flag requests, 355 of them, 90%, almost 91%, were made ex parte. So that means a judge was asked to make a ruling without even holding a hearing where the person who was accused of having this great mental break that somehow justifies taking their guns away could respond. Facing your accuser is a bedrock of the American justice system. I think I read something about that in the Sixth Amendment. Except, of course, when Malibu Mallory is writing the laws, then it's a kangaroo court. That's 90% of the time that gun grabbers requested that a judge make a ruling without the gun owner even being present to respond to the allegations or to participate in their own defense. 95 of those ex parte complaints were actually handled ex parte. So a complainant goes in, requests an ex parte hearing, the judge makes a ruling ex parte, and the legal gun owner is informed after it happens. So 3 and 4 red flag requests in Michigan were granted that first year. 90% of those requests were made ex parte, and in 95% of the time, the decision was made ex parte. All of this is not very Michigan. This is not a very Michigan form of justice, and it all owes to Mallory McMorrow. She takes a whole hell of a lot of credit for it in her book. Her entire book builds to this one accomplishment, which is the red flag law, so we should give her as much credit for it as she has demanded. Only in 11% of the cases did a red flag complaint actually lead to criminal charges. So 391 requests, 273 seizures, but only a handful of criminal charges. If the red flag law does not exist to disarm criminals, what is the point of it? I say it all the time. The purpose of a system is what it does. The purpose of the red flag law seems to be, based on the way it's been used, to disarm legal gun owners. Legal gun owners who've not done anything wrong, who even after their case is reviewed, their home is searched, their guns are seized, very few of them ever end up facing charges. If Mallory McMorrow wanted to come up with a scheme to seize guns from legal gun owners, if that was the thing behind the thing, how would it look any different than the law she has passed? So yes, Michigan is the America of America, but just like America, we're at risk of new arrivals and their belief that Michigan should be like the third-rate states that they left. Mallory McMorrow has created a kangaroo court that all of Michigan will have to live by until the law is either struck down as unconstitutional, which it sounds to be, or the law is repealed by Republicans in an effort that could not start until 2027 at the earliest, and that's assuming a Republican governor, Republican House, Republican Senate, and those people all having the balls to act. That's a lot of if. When Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the red flag law 3 years ago, May 2023, a family whose child survived the Oxford High School shooting was there, and they were featured prominently. Whitmer took pictures with the family, and those pictures ran prominently in news coverage. Nobody was allowed to say this then, but I am, so I will. A red flag law would not have stopped Ethan Crumbley at Oxford High School, not even a little bit. Ethan was let down that day by parents who didn't really have any time for him. They kind of wanted to rush their way, get back to their affairs, get back to their day jobs, get back to DoorDash and whatever else they were preoccupied with. His parents did not have any time for the kid. Ethan was let down by school officials who noted his homework where he drew pictures of guns and guns being fired and all these red flag type things, but never thought to search the kid's bag, to even grab the bag and note, hey, this kind of feels a little heavy. Can I go through this? Ethan Crumbley was let down by the adults in his life, whether they were parents or school officials acting in loco parentis. But none of this is a red flag that would have been foreseen. Ethan Crumbley was like 15, 16 at the time of the shooting. Him owning a gun would be bright line illegal. You wouldn't need a red flag hearing. You wouldn't need even ex parte. You would just call 911 and the cops would show up because it's bright line illegal. That didn't happen because nobody knew the kid had a gun. No one knew the kid owned a gun. Only the parents knew that he had access to it, and they thought he didn't have access to it. They'd seen him shoot it when he was with them, but they thought it was secure. And so in no way, shape, or form did what happened at Oxford High School in November 2021, in no way would it have been prevented by a red flag law. So why would an Oxford High School parent and family be there when the red flag law is signed? They were there, they were enlisted by the Democrats to create an emotionalism that overrode facts, truth, history, and common sense. Democrats wanted the emotionalism of the Oxford High School shooting to be used as reason to disarm the public legally. And we let them do that. We let them do that with so very little pushback. What's done is done and will need to be undone. But this time, in 2026, we have the chance to stop the red flag before it becomes the law and before it becomes the lawmaker. Mallory McMorrow is a walking red flag. It's now our job to test just how much she really loves Michigan. And the only way we can find this out is if and when she loses. If McMorrow books a loss in the U.S. Senate race, will she stay or will she go? My guess is she'll be gone within 2 years. Apparently it takes her quite a long time to move. But without the lure of being a politician, without that feel of power, without that Senate pen and all the privileges of being a lawmaker, being important, having a staff, without any of that, does McMorrow stay in Michigan? Seeing as she's been working toward politics almost from the day she moved here, it seems unlikely. But there's only one way to find out. Will you help me run that experiment? Let's find out just how much Mallory McMorrow does love Michigan. Let's turn her into a loser and see whether that turns her into a lever. As always, this is the James Dixon Podcast, and I am your host, James David Dixon. I'm re-upping the Dixon Declaration. I say it all the time. If you can gather 10 Republicans in a room, I will come speak to that room. If you are interested, as we're getting into Lincoln Day season across the state, reach out to me. JamesDixonPodcast@gmail.com, JamesDixonPodcast@gmail.com, and I will come to your town and we will talk about these things. If you liked what you heard today, if you learned something new today, if you got a new perspective on the state you love and call home, don't hoard this knowledge to yourself. Share the podcast with a friend. Give me a 5-star rating on Spotify or leave a remark on Substack. I'm looking for 10 new paid subscribers, whether it's on my X at Down I-75, whether it's at the James Dixon Podcast at Substack.com. If you support my work, consider a subscription. Traveling Michigan is not cheap, especially in this era of $5 a gallon gas, and every little bit helps.